All right, it's time for us to get into our next panel of the day. This one is the role of cycling in Africa and the opportunity to enhance the benefits and minimize the cost. I've got Sindile on the line. Sindile, how are you, sir?
Very well, very well. Thank you very much. How are you this lovely morning?
I'm doing great, thank you. You are from Khaltsha Cycles. Tell us a little bit more about the company, and then you can get straight into your panel.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. It's great to be part of this awesome discussion. Also, the conference itself. So, Khaltsha Cycles started last year in 2019, and we started just randomly teaching people how to ride bicycles. And we felt the need that there's quite a lot of people that would like to ride bicycles, but they have no idea how, especially most of our classes were attended by women. And that actually translated to us opening our very first bicycle store in Khaltsha. And we have been always wanting to create cycling communities, especially townships, because we felt that, in order for us to achieve a cycling city in Cape Town, we need to actually start really down in the roots of it all, which is, cycling townships. So I'm really excited to, to engage with some of the panelists that are here. I've touched base with some of them, and it's really such an amazing, amazing group of people who are doing really, really exciting stuff out there. And I'm hoping that all of their contribution, will give some insight in terms of how do we, create job opportunities through the bicycling economy. So if I can dive in, that will be fantastic. So we have, I'll just actually say good morning again to my panelist colleagues. We have Mzikhona Mgedle from Langa. Everybody's going to do obviously their own introductions. And we also have Stefanie from UN Habitat, and we have Isabella from the UCI, and we have Amanda from the University of Makerere. And I would like to say good morning to everyone, or good afternoon in some of you. Well, I think all of you are in Europe, so most of you are in Europe. Good day, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Great, great. So I think we're just going to start with a brief introduction. I think of Isabella. I've spoken to you guys, Stefanie, Mzi. Amanda, hello. Great to see you. And I think a round of introductions. Maybe let's start with Mzi. Basically, who you are, what you do.
Thank you. My name is Mzikhona Mgedle. I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. I'm founder and managing director for Langa Bicycle Hub, a hub that is a home for all cycling needs in our community, improving mobility and also using bicycles for deliveries for bedridden, and also empowering our traders with bicycles so that they can move easily on their day-to-day logistics for their business. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we can go to Stefanie, then Amanda, then we'll finish off with Isabella.
Yes, thanks, Sindile. Good morning to everyone. My name is Stefanie Holzwarth, and I work in the urban mobility team at the Urban Basic Services section at UN Habitat. We are the UN agency that deals with urban development and sustainable urbanization. We are headquartered in Kenya, in Nairobi, and I'm very excited to be part of this panel and see a lot of my friends here as well.
I'm the Vice President of the World Cycling Alliance. I'm also the acting chairperson of the National Fiscal Planning Board in Uganda, and that's a very good opportunity for cycling because it can be integrated in the bigger picture. I'm happy to be here.
Good morning. My name is Isabella. I work for the UCI, the International Cycling Union. the world governing body for cycling, whose main objective is to promote and develop cycling as a competitive sport, but also as a form of transport and as a healthy and sustainable form of recreation. So happy to be part of this panel as well.
Fantastic, thank you very much, guys. And I think, I mean, our topic is quite an interesting one, and I think we pretty much familiar with the opportunities that cycling actually brings. And I think when I was talking to Isabella actually yesterday, we touched a little bit in terms of what are some of the opportunities that are out there that cycling can actually bring. And maybe I would like to actually let me start with Amanda, because I know in Uganda, I mean, there's quite a lot of work that you guys are doing. Maybe you can actually kick us off, in terms of what are some of the exciting initiatives that are happening that we can learn from, and what are some of the stumbling blocks or the blockages that you guys are currently facing?
Yeah, thank you. The good news is that we have a policy. It's called the Non-Motorized Transport Policy in the Ministry of Works and Transport. And that's a big plus because it caters for walking, cycling, catering for people with disabilities, access to buildings. And that's a good starting point. Then we also have several people riding a lot, although they are not seen because the infrastructure is really still inadequate. It's difficult to see them because they are not in their space. In the rural areas or rural towns, there are more numbers compared to the capital in Kampala. It's being used for access to education, to health, to markets. So it has a big role it's playing. The attitude is one of the biggest problems we have. And this attitude also comes because there's no infrastructure. Well, we have some big steps we have taken. We have some 3.5 kilometers of cycling infrastructure in Kampala, and it is really protected. The Club for Kampala to do that, but it's a statement that cycling is a mode of transport and it can actually be in a city, not only changing the attitude. The attitude can get better if the infrastructure is in place. Reason being, the hierarchy of the road users kind of puts a cyclist in a very pity situation. When it's raining, it's muddy. When there are potholes, they are not feeling safe. So until infrastructure is in place, the attitude might not come up. And this also affects the gender, the gender perspective of it. They will, I think, if they will come in bigger numbers if the infrastructure is catered for. That will also change their attitude. So I see that we.
I think we lost Amanda there. Maybe just to pick up on the point that you were talking about, Steffi, I think me and you actually were having a conversation in terms of how policy, I mean, I know you guys work a lot around that and how that can influence, government investment into infrastructure, and also investment not only just in infrastructure, into accessibility, because I think the biggest issue that we have in maybe perhaps in other countries, but not to preempt you, is that we have an issue of access into affordable quality bicycles, but at the same time into infrastructure. But then how do we drive policy on really enforcing government to actually start taking really critical steps in ensuring that there's safety, and also that encourages more people to actually be on bicycles?
Yes, I think policy obviously is a very important point. And I remember some data from the Global Outlook report on walking and cycling, which I think was developed in 2016. It had shown that 69% of African countries do have a sort of a national NMT commitment. So any commitment that is promoting walking or cycling, while still 31% of the countries do not have such a commitment. In comparison to the global data, globally we have 21% of countries that do not have a commitment. So Africa, the African continent, definitely has some work to do in terms of pushing for those commitments. That could be, for example, NMT policies, cycling strategies, walking strategies, but very often it's just a chapter, for example, in a general transport policy, which is maybe lesser pushing and lesser binding than for having, for example, a separate NMT policy. I'm stressing the fact of the policy because policies normally come with an implementation plan, and it also comes with an investment plan. And we have seen some very good examples, for example, in Ethiopia, in Uganda, in Kenya, where budgetary commitments were embedded in the NMT policies, to then also ensure that we are going to invest over the next few years, over the course of that policy, in better facilities, better infrastructure for walking and cycling.
Fantastic. Maybe also to then take that and bring it back to Isabella. I mean, Isabella, so great to have you once again. The UCI, when we were talking yesterday, is that there's quite a lot of requirements that the UCI actually has for cities when they actually want to bid for hosting the World Champs. What are some of those requirements, or are there any other requirements that actually can really drive even maybe African cities actually to really start implementing the plans that come with policy, as Steffi was saying, because I think there's a very good opportunity there. It's that to use sport and also to use the ability to want to actually host such amazing events in our cities, but also at the same time to ensure that once the event is gone, it's wrapped up, it still has contributed something for the city, or it still has forced the cities to actually be cognizant or to implement the plans that they've put together.
Yes, fully agree with you. Sport definitely has a responsibility to ensure that it leaves a much greater impact. And what we don't want is for organizers to come in, spend a lot of public money, close streets, have a race, leave, and then nothing changes. So what we're trying to do within the UCI, and so we have a whole list of requirements when it comes to hosting World Championships, World Cups, and we have organizer guides for that. But what we have in parallel is a program called the UCI Bike City Label. And what we do with this program is we present it to candidate cities that want to host UCI events, saying, well, you can host an event, but actually you have an opportunity to have a much wider impact for your population, and working with the momentum that's created between a city, the public or city officials working with private entities as well, and using that opportunity to be able to create opportunities for the population to cycle as well. So the label is based on a number of criteria that includes having a long-term strategy in place, having a dedicated budget. So as Stefanie mentioned, clarifying that there is a budget associated to this program so that they can actually implement the actions. And then having projects related to children cycling, to road safety, to mass participation events, getting more people out on the streets on their bikes, increasing infrastructures as well for cycling, and having an ambition to increase the percentage of people cycling, and then having a monitoring and kind of progress report mechanism in place so that we can actually follow that. So then we give this label to cities that will host UCI events, but then also kind of fit the other criteria in terms of ensuring that the event kind of brings a much wider legacy. And so then I work with this network of cities and regions to promote the work that they do. And we're at 14 cities and regions now. And kind of one of the things we really need to improve is that we are mainly based out of Europe. So most of the cities are in Europe. We have Vancouver in Canada, but the ambition is to make sure that we have cities and regions from all continents, including Africa. And so we'll have a great opportunity in 2025 as the UCI Road World Championships will be taking place in Africa. So the city and country hasn't been announced yet, and that will be decided next year. But once that's announced, I think that's a fantastic opportunity to see how we can combine sport and transport, actually.
I was just actually about to see if I can be opportunistic here, Isabella, and ask which city exactly in Africa will be the one that is hosting, the UCI World Champs. Because honestly, I think it's about time that we actually, we start hosting such big events in Africa, because I think there's such great potential. Speaking from experience myself, I started commuting, at the age of 7, going to school and home using my bicycle. But then from there, progressed into, competitive cycling, which is something that we have seen, starts to happen. If people start, learning how to ride a bicycle, immediately they want to then, to see whether they are interested in some other, disciplines within cycling, which actually is really, really exciting. I want to bring in Mzi here. Mzi has been a comrade of mine. We know each other from open streets, and he's been such an amazing, influencer and leader in Cape Town, especially in the township of Langa, which I grew up from as well. But I mean, I just want to bring you in here in terms of what have you been doing in Langa to actually promote cycling, but not just as a mode of, the means of commuting, but there's been such an amazing work that you've been doing since lockdown in terms of moving not only people forward, but products as well.
Thank you, Sindile. So we were so lucky to get our first donated bicycles from a campaign, Heroes on Bikes, from Khaltsha Cycles, and we explore a possibility of helping during the trying times with community kitchens, where we deliver food, and also helping with an NPO clinic to deliver some of the meds for people who are bedridden. So this has grown up in such a way that so many people who have been left out during the COVID time, especially when we were in level 2, they couldn't access any social or community kitchen food parcels. So we have been using bicycles to get fresh food from community kitchens and deliver in their homes by using a bicycle and a WhatsApp group, where we have all of them in a WhatsApp group and we map them on Google Maps. So this has changed the way we hope to make the lives of people who are bedridden and sick in bed, because they've been missing out, and they really appreciate the free service delivery with bicycles. And it's still happening, and the government is trying to explore ways of how we can be supported. So we use bicycles to deliver the food packs, and also we also exploring a home for a cycling needs in our community, a bike shop where we will be fixing and also selling bicycles supported by Khaltsha Cycles and other companies who are within cycling space and together with the government. So the main challenge is that we have seen the number of many kids riding unsafe ever since the lockdown started. So many kids on bicycles who are so keen to be on a bike, and we have started a new program where we having bicycle brigades, which we are going around the streets with some few tools to fix bicycles for these kids, and also referring them to our base where we are trying to develop so that they can have some bicycle services. And we're also asking the government to come on board, because this is becoming unsafe for them, because they are using their they are fit to break, and it's very risky. Number of these kids who have been cycling ever since the lockdown started. So that is also a current project we are busy doing at the moment. So our objective is to have bicycles as a mode of transport in our narrow road, and also making sure that cycling is seen as a way of commuting in our township. Thank you.
Fantastic. I think my question actually, maybe I'll just put this on the floor. I mean, whoever would like to pick it up can please pick it up. In terms of how do we make all of these initiatives, sustainable? How can we make them create more job opportunities in the longer term? Because, for example, you have these brigades he's talking about that are really doing voluntary work at this point in time. And have a really good potential of actually creating a source of income in terms of maybe providing training for mechanics to actually be able to open a network of bicycle stores or actually workshop stores that can be able to service these initiatives. And I think maybe in terms of, Steffi, how do we then drive, or maybe Steffi and Amanda, how do we then drive government to actually subsidize some of these efforts? In terms, maybe I don't know if you guys have any experience with something like that, of that nature.
Yeah, I think that government is already awake. COVID-19 presented a big opportunity, although it's a challenge. When public transport was closed during the lockdown, most people could not commute except by bicycle and walking. That was permitted. And some have continued to ride. But again, it's also opening up the eyes of government that the infrastructure gaps are glaring. So I think right now, government is now in a better position than before COVID-19 when it comes to cycling and the perception. The attitude change is automatically happening, and people are realizing, during this time, we had no other way of moving around, and the bicycle became important. But I also wanted to mention that you asked, I think, Isabella, which African country she thinks there can be something like that, an event for cycling. Kampala actually won the bid to host Velocity Conference 2022, which is a cycling conference. However, because of COVID-19, again, we have to be pushed to 2023. So yeah, I think we are seeing cycling discussions coming on our continent, and it will be the first time Africa is hosting Velocity Conference, by the way. So I think government is already excited because it presents a tourism possibility and opportunities that come with it. Government on our side is already fine-tuned, but just actions are what are missing. And that comes down to the level of the implementers at city level, at the town level, that can incorporate cycling in the city network planning. The network is very important. One lane, 1 kilometer is not enough. It has to be a complete network.
I would like to add to what Amanda was saying. I think there's also a need to look at import regulations and also tax reductions for bicycles that are coming onto the continent. And there's still, I think, a few countries that have quite high taxes on bicycle imports. And I think it's important also for those countries to make bicycles more affordable and therefore also encourage the local entrepreneurs and the social enterprises to make bicycle business.
You know, we ran out of bicycles in the shops during lockdown. We didn't have bicycles. And our president was promising to have a bicycle factory in the country. And I think that is something that we had never had him speak for all these years he has been in leadership. That rhymes with what Steffi is saying, taxation, production, and assembling here. The quality of bikes that we have is not that attractive. That's also another aspect, that they can be cool bikes. I think that would also be nice.
No, definitely. That's quite an interesting one, actually, when, with regards to how I think government sort of, loses the willingness to actually support such initiatives. I think it's a no-brainer to everyone that bicycles provide such an amazing opportunity. And in terms of actually how we can get the support and the willingness that we need to actually get those things going. For example, in South Africa as well, I mean, we used to produce bicycles here back in the day. In terms of where that industry actually went, it's something that actually still boggles the mind, because the need of bicycles, even now in South Africa, it's been amazing since lockdown, and also the scarcity of spares now has become such a big deal, because to just find a 26-inch tube for your bicycle, it's like finding a gold or a diamond. You know, it's such a rare thing to find. But it's been incredible, and I think we are, you know, our government currently is sort of missing an opportunity. But I want to touch, I want to bring back Isabella. In terms of, I mean, you've been working very hard I know the UCI has been working very hard in terms of mirroring the two, you know, sports cycling and also just cycling in general, and encouraging that. And I just wanted to actually maybe look into some of the initiatives that you guys are doing in so I think my earphones are not about that. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you very well.
Now
okay,
it's clearer.
I think it's my headset. Now it's clear.
Yeah,
I think it's my
clear.
headset. Anyway, Isabella, I just wanted to bring you back in again in terms of, I mean, what platform or what can the UCI actually create, not only just in terms of sports cycling, but in terms of promoting other opportunities that are there in cycling. For example, you know, developing coaches, developing women who are mechanics, because I think that is actually quite missing. If you look at all the teams within the cycling as a professional team, it's really male dominated, and I think for me it's quite an interesting, or it's quite a very close part into my heart, where we need to get more women into the sports of cycling. Are there any plans from the UCI to actually sort of challenge the status quo currently?
Yes, so definitely one of if I can call it a tool we have is that UCI is actually based around an elite international training center. So we're based at the World Cycling Center, and the objective of the World Cycling Center is to help the development of cycling worldwide, especially helping developing nations. So on the one hand, we organize courses for coaches. We organize courses for mechanics. So our different national federations can send people to the UCI to take these courses. And then we also support athletes within the different disciplines. So we've had hundreds of athletes now over the course of the last few years that have come to train, whether it's in BMX, in track, in road. We actually manage a women's continental team as well, which has women from all over the world. And then we also have a solidarity program. So if I'm not mistaken, 2019, over $1 million Swiss francs were actually, I don't want to say donated, but were invested into programs that have been put in place by our national federations to promote cycling. So whether it's putting together development programs for athletes, whether it's development programs for coaches, for mechanics. We recently have received more requests when it comes to developing programs for kids. So the UCI is supporting financially these programs to help these developing nations that don't necessarily have the funding to do this. And so that's one big part of our mission, and it's making sure that it's not just developing elite sport, but developing also grassroots sport, getting more kids on bikes, making sure that our national federations can be more involved when it comes to promoting everyday cycling. So not just getting kind of the next national champion or the next world champion, but rather ensuring that, that cycling is more normalized within their country, and that opportunities are there for other, you know, riders, athletes, but also, as you said, mechanics, coaches, support staff, so that the whole system is supported within a country.
Great stuff. So we're going to be taking some questions at 10 to 12. But I think one of my questions actually would be, to Steffi. Walkable and cyclable cities. I know you've been working quite a bit around that, and I just wanted to actually, to pick your brain in terms of, for example, someone who's listening that is based in a community somewhere that is quite keen in terms of how do we create this community to be a bicycle-friendly community. What are some of the key steps that one would actually need to take or consider before diving into that?
Okay, maybe I can share from my experience of living in Kenya. I moved to Kenya in 2015. And I remember by the time I joined, I also joined, for example, the critical mass movement. And it was by that time rather small. It was, I would say, between 20 and 50 people or so. Nowadays, if you join critical mass in Kenya, it's hundreds and hundreds of people. And I think it really shows how over the last years, let's say the bottom-up initiatives and the cycling community has very much grown. I think it's quite an important aspect, having a strong civil society, and I'm sure that Mzikhona and Sindile, you are working, on that side of the coin, and I'm sure that you can probably confirm that having a strong civil society is important. I think what's also important is that there is sufficient platforms where the civil society can also meet the government and express their needs and their demands towards better infrastructure for cycling, in order to be in constant dialogue, in order to be literally working as advisors to policies, to street design standards, and so on that are needed in the country. So I think really having that exchange going on between a strong civil society and between a listening government, let's say, I think is very much key for the success.
Yeah, and also to add on what Steffi has mentioned, the political will is a very strong element. It's also an example from Kampala that before the political leadership said yes, the infrastructure implementation did not happen. So it's important that the technical leaders work together with the political leaders so that the public can also adjust their behavior. But what I see is very important is the media. The role of the media is very key. The media is a mouthpiece, and it helped us a lot in Kampala that we could engage them. Tomorrow, actually, we are meeting them again in the morning about NMT, because the infrastructure is now in place, but cars are parking there. Motorcycles are using the lanes. Vendors are now using the walkways and the bicycle lanes. So tomorrow we are meeting the media and also engage people on the streets. So that's also very important. It creates a sustainable approach towards real change for better cycling.
Yeah. So also, what we have seen interesting is that people are already taking up the space of making possible cycling lanes. I mean, with these kits that we see and many people on bicycles in our community, people are raising the impact that the government really needs to act in order to have cycling lanes and also to make sure that there is a home for cycling needs, and especially in townships, because so many people who have bicycles, but they are demanding to be in the space, but not everyone is willing to be riding next to a taxi driver which is driving fast, and kids are already making use of this so that the government can act.
Great point. Yeah, I think we actually have a question. So the question is coming from Richard Malinga. So Richard says, what would it take to increase the cycling way network in, say, Kampala? I think this one is for you, Amanda. From a policy perspective, what are the key drivers and inhibitors that have to be navigated?
Thank you, Richard, for your question. The biggest driver is definitely infrastructure. The policy, we are sorted. We can only improve it, but we have a policy. We are lucky to have it. The drivers, it's the infrastructure. The current network, as I mentioned, is just a single corridor. So it is from nowhere to nowhere. I think a big network would be a key driver to connect people, and also selecting the network in a careful way, because we have hilly areas where one wouldn't invest in a cycling lane. But we also have valleys, so it would be very important to connect those valleys and make it attractive, street lighting. Then the inhibitors we have, it's the attitude, basically, and the increasing motorization, which makes a cycling experience very difficult. It takes the courage and the bold to go on the streets of Kampala on the bicycle for most of the streets.
All right. Actually, before, I know Ben is not gonna be happy with me here a little bit because he's saying that we're running out of time. But I just wanted to actually ask this question, Amanda, on top of what Richard is actually asking in terms of and what you're saying about the attitude. How do we change that? How do we even begin to influence that attitude? And I think it goes furthermore in terms of people really ditching their car and traveling by either a public train or a bus to work, or actually even commuting, in terms of lowering our emissions. So how do we even begin to shift that attitude?
I think if we raise the status of cycling by providing for it, in terms of policy, in terms of enforcement, networks, it already puts a cycling status somewhere up there in the skies. If that is not done, it will be difficult. So it has to be gradual infrastructure design, yes, but also awareness creation, and not of the general public, by the way, of the policymakers, of the city planners. They need to be aware that cycling is an integral part of transport planning. So the awareness, the attitude change, to me now, for the case of Uganda, has shifted a bit from the general public to the decision makers and implementers. If they change the attitude, everything will happen.
All right. In just seconds, Isabella, we're about to close. Your closing statement, and then it will be followed by Stefanie and then Z. In just less than, what do we do from here?
So if I maybe continue on just the last point we discussed, I think sport has a great opportunity here to help kind of normalize cycling as a form of transport, using the athletes that we have, the champions that we have, working with them as ambassadors, and showing that cycling is not just a sport for white men in Lycra, but rather an accessible form of transport that's inclusive and that allows people from all over the world to move from A to B. So hopefully we can use that momentum within sport to also pass that message more.
Okay, I'll follow that. I think we spoke a lot about the economic argument for the individual cyclist of having cycling as a very affordable means of transport. But I think that notion should also be much more communicated to government stakeholders, because the cost effectiveness of investing in cycling infrastructure is, for example, much higher than, for example, investing in big highways or flyovers or tunnels. So I think that economic argument also needs to be much more quantified, much more researched upon, and then also much more communicated to and by governments.
Z, your parting words? Thank you, Steffi. I think we lost Z. I think we lost Z there. Let me just take the opportunity to thank everyone. Thank you so much. Amanda, so great to see you. I know we actually see each other on Twitter. And it's such a pleasure to actually finally see you too. And also Isabella and Steffi, thank you so much for your inputs. And I think from here, let's just continue the conversation, and also, keeping on briefing each other in terms of the inroads that we're making. So I'm really excited to have connected with you all. And thank you for the opportunity to all the coordinators of the conference. I really appreciate it. I always wanted to say this. Over to you in the Khaltsha studio.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Sindile.
I've noticed that our moderators are loving the fact that they can become presenters on their own. But thank you so much, Sindile. It has been great having you and your panel.